Hello, social studies students. This is Mrs. Stirk again, and we're back for part 2 of Gettysburg, where we talk about the actual battle. And I've got our questions on the screen again, because remember, we're supposed to be thinking about these as we study Gettysburg. So just as a reminder, let's go through where Lee is at now as we're approaching Gettysburg. First of all, he's very confident. He's just won 2 battles, and he just keeps winning these miraculous battles where people outnumber him, the Union outnumbers him, and they just keep using these crummy generals against him, and he keeps winning. On the downside, though, he lost Stonewall Jackson. There he is being sad about that. And that's that tombstone I was telling you about. The arm of Stonewall Jackson. Also, his troops are in bad shape. They are hungry, they're tired, they're sick, they want to go home, they don't have good clothes, they don't have enough to eat, they don't have good shoes. And also, Lee is sick as well. Lots of the people in both the Union and the Confederacy got really sick from diseases and things too. And Lee, it just so happens, has diarrhea at the time of the Battle of Gettysburg. What a bummer for him. So, day 1, which is July 1st, 1863. So, the Union is led by Meade, who replaced Hooker, and the Confederates are led by Lee. And they meet by chance at Gettysburg. Meade was ordered to find and attack the rebel army and to keep Washington, D.C. safe, and neither army knew where the other one was. The rebels hear that there's a shoe factory in Gettysburg, and they say, hey, let's go there because we need shoes. And the Union and rebel cavalry units meet on accident, and a skirmish breaks out. Lee decides to mobilize his entire army, and 60,000 Confederate troops show up. The Union ends up retreating to Cemetery Ridge after some fighting, which is U-shaped, and it is high ground, which is a very strong defensive position. However, Lee thinks that the Union is still vulnerable, but during the night, reinforcements arrive. So now we go to day 2, which is July 2nd. During the second day, the Union forces are able to hold back the Confederates because they have such a super awesome position. Once again, it's high ground and it's U-shaped, so it's very strong. They hold back ferocious fighting at multiple fronts. One spot is Cemetery Ridge, which we just talked about, and also at Little Round Top. Here is a picture of Cemetery Ridge, and here is a picture of Little Round Top. But the Union is able to hold their position. Another thing that didn't go well for Lee on the second day was Jeb Stuart, who was Lee's cavalry superhero, joins Lee, which is really great. But he uses the same strategy without as big of a difference, because this time he meets his match in General George Armstrong Custer, the Union cavalry leader. So now we're going to go to day 3. At this point, everybody is very tired. They've lost lots of men. And they've been unsuccessful. The Confederates have been unsuccessful in trying to break through the Union lines. Lee decides to make one last attempt to break through the Union lines. Really, he fails to see reality, And he makes the same mistake that Burnside made earlier, where even though the Union has a really, really defendable position, and even though they're on the high ground and the Confederates are on the low ground, he still decides to make a frontal attack. He orders Picketts Charge. Picketts Charge is one of the most famous moments in the entire Civil War. He orders an attack led by General George Pickett, in which 14,000 men march across an open field. From here, where the Confederate line is, across an open field toward the Union's strong point, their stronghold. They were just gunned down. It was heroic, it was brave, it was gallant, but as far as the battle is concerned, it was suicide. Less than 50% of them reached the line at all, and afterward, Pickett was angry about it, and he said, "That old man had my division massacred." So finally, after Pickett's charge, Lee realizes that it's hopeless, and that is the end of that battle. As you can see, there were tremendous casualties sustained on both sides, almost 23,000 for each side of the Union and the Confederacy. That's a lot. Lee's army retreats south, and this is a drawing of them retreating. And the Confederate Army never threatens the North again after that. They do go on to fight for another 2 years, but it's pretty much on the way down from then on out. Also, I told you we would come back to it. Vicksburg ends up surrendering on July 4th, which is the day after, to Grant. So he was also finally successful. Those two things together really led to it being a turning point in the Union's favor. 4 months later, on November 19th, 1863, Lincoln comes to Gettysburg to dedicate a cemetery that honors the ones who died in battle. At first, people didn't really know what had happened because his speech was so short, but later on, people started to realize now that this was one of the best speeches anybody has ever given anywhere, and that it continues to shape who we define ourselves to be as Americans and how we define what the purpose of war is whenever it is needed. So, thank you for watching, and it is now your turn to ask those questions. Why is the Battle of Gettysburg considered the turning point for so many historians? What went wrong for Lee? And also, what went right for the Union? I hope that you learned a lot, and I'll see you next time. This is Mrs. Stirk, signing off.